All right, guys, now we're going to talk about the actual. No. All right, guys, tonight we're going to talk about reading a server. And we all know how important first ball contact is, so reading a server is really something everybody needs to be able to do. What we're trying to accomplish here is making sure we know where that serve is going to go prior to her even serving that ball. So when we talked about reading again, it's all about anticipation of the process, knowing what's going to happen before it does so that we can set up our defense, serve, receive, and attacking better. So let's talk about why and the positions on the court that really need to know what's going on. The passers, this is a no-brainer. Your job as a passer, 80 to 90% of the work on a serve is done prior to the ball crossing the plane of the net. So reading everything to identify where they're going to be. So if we can put our body in the right position to make the play, then it's just about platform angle and you're good to go. So passers, obviously anticipation of contact of the ball location. Setters, anticipation of pass location. So this is looking too deep now on reading. As a setter, we need to see the serve and we also need to see the passer and read both of them to identify where the ball's actually going to end up being passed. All right. One other thing, by the way, about passers, when we're talking about reading a server, is also identifying emergency ball process. If we think that this is going to be a really tough serve, but it's not coming at us, we can go and automatically get behind another passer to make sure it's not shanked out of bounds or whatever the case may be. And then hitters, the important part about this is again looking too deep into reading, which is we have to read both the server and then we also have to read and make sure we know what's going on with our setter. But reading the server and the passer is going to allow you as a hitter to know what sets to call. Now in serve receive, we should pretty much have that down pat, but we will have options to get out of sets that are more advanced, that are higher, faster sets. If we can't get them because of a pass, we need to know that early, so that's part of that process. The reading opportunities, the way we actually identify this, I added a few as of recently. The first one is the angle, the approach, and the spot that they serve from. Dead giveaway, all right? One of the things that most coaches teach is the hardest serve to pass is a straight line serve from line to line. I do agree with that as far as the technique in passing. As far as the reading and predictability, super easy. Vision, you got to pay attention to where that server is actually looking. It's a big thing. When they go through the routine, I guarantee you every single one of you automatically looks at where you want to serve that ball. Because that's a process that we're taught. That's a process that I teach. So you really have to make sure that you're watching their eyes and you'll catch where they're serving that ball. And what happens when I play is I actually watch and then I'll just move there and stand there. And then if they go somewhere else, fine. But at least I made a good option, a good read to get myself in a position to play the ball. Posture, we talk about the body posture of a player. What do they look like when they're serving the ball? Are their shoulders forward? Is their back bent? What's it look like? This is something that's more effective at the JV level, but it still plays a role at the varsity level. The toss itself is a huge thought process as to how we can identify what type of serve is coming at us and whether or not it's going to float or whatever the case may be. The serve type, we'll come back to that. We all know what that is. The contact point on the ball is a big pickup. It's hard to see from 60 feet back, but if you can see that someone's hand is up, underneath, over, to the side, it's going to tell you which way that ball is actually going to spin so you can position yourself appropriately. And the depth and the speed of the approach. So identifying how far they are off the back line, how fast they're moving into their approach is going to dictate how quickly the ball moves, how deep it actually is because it's moving faster, and obviously a number of other things in the approach itself. So the first thing we're going to talk about is, again, angle of approach. And I've just given 3 basic ones. These are just to give you guys an idea of how this works. This would be somebody serving out of the 1. If they're coming flat on, straight, and it's a float serve, and if they're facing, say they're in 1 and they're facing 5, and it's a straight approach float serve, this is going to be a ball going straight down the line. There's no other option. Unless they mishit it, the only way that it can go is left, with their body torquing, but generally speaking, most float servers at the varsity level are going to be pretty straight and know what's going on. If they angle in, it's going to give them the option to serve pretty much anywhere except the line. So if you see that they're starting in 1 and they're automatically angling their body in, there's a very good chance that our 5 passer is not going to see this pass. So we can adjust off that line just a tad bit to get an idea of what it looks like. So if someone's serving from the dead middle, which doesn't happen that much, but they have straight down the middle. They can serve, if they're serving from the dead middle, but they're angled towards 5. Obviously, you're not going to see that serve go into 1. You might see some of it in 5, but most likely, they're going straight down that line. And what they're trying to do is get you to play that ball out to your left, which is a very difficult ball to do. But as we know, that also has the least space of them to work with. You're serving from the middle to the corners. It's the least space they have. So they have about somewhere around 42 feet for that serve to go in. It's not that much. Serving from the right side is the same thing, or serving in this case from 5. If someone's straight on and you see that approach, like there's 2 things to identify. Where are they serving from, and what's the angle in which they're approaching? Are they curving when they approach? Are they running straight? We're going to run straight, and that's because predictability with our serves I'm not going to worry about. We're just going to take people out with our serves. They're going to be so aggressive that it's going to be very difficult to pass even if they knew where the ball was going. That being said, with other servers, we do have to pay attention. Do they have a hitch in how they serve? So if someone's a float server, but because of club ball, they didn't have enough space, they learned an approach that was left to right or whatever the case is, you need to note that because it's more likely that they're going to be top spinning or side spinning or whatever the case may be. So pretty straightforward stuff. Next, let's talk about posture. There's really 2 things you look for in posture. Where are the shoulders and where's the back? So when you're looking at a server and you see the shoulders go back, we know topspin. Topspin or short serve. But even that short serve at that point is difficult for a lot of players to make. So watch the back, lower back, and the shoulders. If the shoulders are forward, you're going to see more of a driving motion, a lower ball. Anything that goes up, you're going to try to see someone top spinning. So it can still fall quickly, but it has to go up first. But posture is pretty easy to identify. If you see that a player is tossing the ball behind their back or behind their body and they end up doing this is what younger servers do that we need to actually break. Moving on to the toss, there's a lot of things that can tell you a lot about this toss. First is it high or low? Okay, one of the things we always teach is simplicity in serving. So the higher the toss, the more complicated it is. You're waiting for that ball to come down. The chance of that ball floating is very, very small. It's tossing a ball up that's spinning and expecting your hand to be able to stop it from spinning on contact. It doesn't happen that often. So if it's a high toss, get ready for spin. And it's going to be predictable too, because you're going to now see the ball being tossed high and you're going to see the contact on the ball with your hand. You'll literally know where to stand. As soon as you see, hey, they're snapping over and they're a little bit to the right of the ball, I'm immediately going to shift over, turn my platform, and it's done. Is it behind or in front? If it's in front of the serve, or if it's in front of the server, it's going to be a lower, flatter, deeper serve because there's less of an angle to work with. Okay? The more we hit the ball up, the shorter the ball can go. That's why our short serves are served a bit higher. But if the ball's in front of us, I can't send this ball all short, really. It's going to have to go deep, and not necessarily deep, but it has to go further and lower. If the ball's behind me and I'm reaching up here, there's an opportunity for that ball to come shorter. But just, deeper toss, higher ball, shorter toss, lower and flatter. One-handed versus two-handed. There are kids that serve one-handed, kids that serve two-handed. When we're talking jump float, I like the consistency of the two-hand toss. There are kids that are, good enough with the one-hand toss consistency. When you're talking about one or two-handed toss, it's all about what you're willing to give up. When you use a two-handed toss, the thing about two-handed toss that's great is that you're going to throw in line with your body every single time. Every single time. It's going to be in the same spot. The downfall of a two-handed toss is that when you toss the ball, you then have to get your arm all the way back, pinch your shoulder blade, and then swing through on the ball. It takes time to do that, and if you're only tossing the ball 8 inches above your head, it's boom, 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 that quick. It's tough to do. I love it because once I got my arm speed up, it gives me a much more consistent tossing process. The one-handed toss never made much sense to me. There are people that do it, and they do it effectively. The major advantage is the arm's back. You're ready to swing. So you can start in that contact position. The problem with it is this. You're now expecting your non-dominant hand, your left hand, to throw the ball in front of you and across your body into your hitting zone. So when we serve the ball, we always want to be hitting right here, always. So I'm taking my non-dominant hand to toss it across my body and to the same spot every time while I'm jumping and running. Doesn't make too much sense. I'd rather just toss the ball with my body and go. Granted, you get more power, but the major disadvantage of that process is inconsistency. And it's not always the case, but I'd venture to say if you had 2 skill level players, one with a two-handed toss, one with a one-handed toss, your one-handed toss is going to get a few more aces. Your two-handed toss is going to get a lot more points. Just the way that works out. Not necessarily from aces, but just from the ability to actually play the ball because they put the ball in more effectively and can control where the ball goes more. So tossing, again, pretty straightforward stuff. Then let's talk about contact point. We'll come back to the serving types in a second. The contact point's really easy. These are 5 options, so if you hit the ball dead from behind, it's going to be a float serve. Super easy. So if you don't see their hand wrap, expect a float serve. If you see their thumb drop on a ball, so they toss it up, and let's say they are a one-handed toss and they toss it to the left of their right shoulder, they're going to end up contacting like this. That's going to send that ball spinning like this, which is going to tell you where that ball actually goes. So watch the toss, because one of the things I didn't talk about with the toss is it in line with their hitting arm? If not, their body has to compensate one way or the other, and that's something to keep in mind. If it's to the right, so if it's to the right, or if you're hitting the ball to the left, it spins right. If you're hitting the ball to the right, it spins left, and that's going to send the ball in opposite directions. If you hit the ball over top the ball, top spin. So if you see those fingers wrap over the ball, and there's a really easy way to do this. Watch this hitter. If you see their arm come back and their wrist break, that's when you know that ball's going to be snapped over top. You can't come back with your arm, break your wrist, and then expect to flatten your wrist upon contact. It doesn't make any sense. So as soon as you watch a server, if they come back and you see that wrist that break, expect to step up and pass this ball, because it's going to be a topspin ball. And then backspin is if we get underneath the ball. Some of you have some trouble with this. So if the ball's in front of you and low, you kind of want to do something like that, and that's going to force the ball to backspin. There's no real advantage or disadvantage to backspin. It's completely predictable. It looks cool, but it's usually a mishit. And we see that sometimes with hitters when they reach too far in front of them and can't get their arm enough to get over top of it and in front of them, they'll cut underneath, and that's where you get that backspin motion from. So the last thing we'll talk about is the serve type and how to identify the serve type. This is super easy. You guys all know what types of serves there are. There are 5 different types of serves, and if you can identify what type of serve's coming at you first hand, it's going to give you a lot of easy options. Or it's going to give you a lot easier transition to actually getting a good first ball contact. Standing float. First thing any coach is going to tell you with the standing float is quiet. And what I mean by that is don't move a lot. You're tossing the ball simply directly in front of you. You should be weight on the left foot, and it's maybe 2-3 steps maximum. If I was teaching it right now, I'd just say it's 1 step. Weight on the right foot, toss, left step, contact. Okay, so the toss is going to be a low toss, because they're going to want to contact the ball at its peak, not on its way down. It's going to be simple movement. It can be one hand or two. Remember, one hand, expect the ball to be moving, less consistency with the float. 2 hand, less power, so it's probably going to come into your power zone at that point. All right, standing topspin, higher toss with your dominant hand. Now, when we teach this to younger kids, we teach throw with your left hand, and we're trying to get them to float serve, so we teach throw with the left hand and then snap. They end up top spinning. So at the younger ages, there will be kids that toss the ball and then snap for a topspin ball with their non-dominant hand. But as they get older, if you're doing a topspin serve, you really want to be using your dominant hand to toss that ball and then go up. That's how a jumps topspin serve is actually born. There's a lot more foot movement because you're tossing the ball higher, so they're usually readjusting their body left and right, and you can identify from there. Like if they toss the ball to the left and they're moving over, you can kind of tell what kind of spin you're going to get on the ball altogether. Then, again, dominant hand toss. At the younger level, though, that might not apply. Jump float. Oh, by the way, these two, they both have a relatively short approach. So they're probably at maximum 5 to 6 feet behind, and there's not a lot of movement going into the approach. It's usually a walking speed. Jump float, obviously you're 7 to 10 feet behind that line. The whole goal of a jump float is to get higher so we can hit flatter. Okay, it's not to hit the ball down, it's to hit flatter. So a deeper approach. Medium toss, by medium I mean maybe 2-3 feet. So something to keep in mind. The concept of a medium toss is you're running with the ball, but it's still at its maximum point. As you jump, it should still go no higher than this. You're not waiting for this ball to come down. Obviously they're deeper in the court, one-handed or two. You still have the same issues with the jump float, one-handed or two. Jump top, super easy to identify. Someone's going to curve, they're going to do whatever the case is, but they're going to toss the ball with their dominant hand. So their left hand would be up or down, doesn't really matter. They're going to get their right hand in front of them down low. They're going to toss the ball high with their right, then go up. Deep approach, fast approach. They're running through the least consistent serve there is because there's so many moving parts to it. I don't really suggest this unless you're someone that's, naturally this makes sense to you and you're really a topspin. But not a lot of our hitters are very flat hitters, not topspin hitting servers or hitters. So this doesn't make a lot of sense. Much deeper approach, and they spin the ball on the toss. one of the advantages of a topspin serve is that when you contact the ball, it's moving in a downward direction. So even though it's going 50 miles an hour, it's falling shorter than most, and it's turning left and right. So a good topspin server will cut around, will cut over, will cut straight over top, but they're going to toss it already with that spin so that when they contact over top of it, it accelerates that spin even more and sends the ball in a downward trajectory. Which is why if you watch pro volleyball or some of the matches that I gave you guys, a lot of the topspin serves end up in the net. It's just the way it's built. The short serve, super easy to identify. Now, short serves can be done with the topspin serve. They can be done with a float serve. They can be done with a jump float. The general key, though, in all three of those, outside of the jump top's a little bit different, but with a jump float and a standing float serve, a short serve, you will see an arch in the back. You will see the shoulders come back a little bit and the head step back. And what the reason is, they have to actually change the arc of the serve from low and flat to high and short. So they're going to contact the ball at a higher angle, and they're actually going to stop their hand. So you're going to see the posture is going to be in a backward leaning motion. You're going to see the toss is medium height, and you're going to see as soon as they contact the ball, they're going to stop their hand. And that's what's going to send the ball short because they're not following through the ball. So it's a pretty easy serve to identify. It's a very, very quiet serve. And most servers can't, like if I'm a jump floater, it's hard for me to serve the ball 40 miles an hour and then go serve it 2 miles an hour, or I'm sorry, serve it 10 miles an hour and just over the net while using the same form. You usually will see some differences in their routine or at least in the speed that they approach the ball, especially with a jump floater. They're probably going to go through a walking process. Their mind naturally thinks, I want to serve it shorter, I need to move less. It's just the way that we are. So you can identify by all these means, identify where it is. And if you get really good at this, you should, as a passer, be able to literally be lined up and waiting for that ball. And that's why outdoor players are so good at passing the ball, because they anticipate prior to actually having to pass the ball. Go through it. If you have any questions, let me know. That should do it. Thanks, guys.